First tonight, police are appealing for clearer lockdown rules after the Derbyshire force apologised to two walkers. The women were wrongly fined for driving to a nearby reservoir. Well, our social affairs correspondent Jeremy Ball is here. Hello to you, Jeremy. And developments tonight then in Parliament.
Yeah, the Home Secretary Priti Patel has announced that councils are being asked to help enforce these coronavirus rules. She also said police are going to move towards fining people more quickly because a minority of people, she said, are putting the nation's health at risk. Now, today the police were out in Nottingham city centre. There have been some big fines there for house parties. We're also seeing tougher checks for shoppers, that they stick to the COVID rules in supermarkets. But now those walkers who drove out to Foremark Reservoir won't have to pay that controversial fine. That's because the stay local advice they ignored wasn't legally enforceable. And it has been pretty confusing to work out what's guidance on lockdown and what's the law. So we've spoken to Dawn, Debbie and Mark, who are BBC Radio Nottingham listeners.
As a nation, I think we're actually looking at what rules we can bend and looking for loopholes, whereas we should be looking at how we can keep ourselves safe and presume that we actually have the virus and could pass it on to people, rather than looking at where the loopholes are and how we can get around them.
Do you think that the whole thing is as confusing as we want to make it? Do you think ourselves, we make it more confusing? And it is quite simple, but we overthink everything.
I think one of the problems we're facing is that the government has sent some very mixed messages. The whole Dominic Cummings issue, which I know is a long time ago now, the Scottish MP who travelled home on public transport with COVID. I think the messages that sends out to the public, to some people, would suggest that actually non-compliance is okay.
You see, I'm the other way. I'm always terrified of doing wrong. So I don't walk my dog anymore because I can't keep 2 metres from everybody. So I get dead anxious and stay in.
Oh, poor dog, eh? Seriously though, what does the law actually say?
Well, in one sense, it's pretty simple. It's currently illegal to leave your home without a reasonable excuse. The hard bit is defining what reasonable excuse really means. Now, that list includes essential shopping, work you can't do from home, exercise, medical care and educational childcare for some people too. The trouble is, the devil's in the detail here. The guidance has lots of caveats, and that's why it's been such a huge challenge, this, for police officers.
Talking about police
There's
officers,
all sorts of ambiguities in the regulations, and without actually stopping every person that we meet and quizzing them, almost Gestapo-like, how are we supposed to enforce that and make a decision? 50% of the population think we're being overzealous, and 50% think we aren't enforcing them enough. So we're just stuck as piggy in the middle, really, trying to do our best for the public to try and make sure that this virus doesn't spread.
So we've also been getting some reaction from our police commissioners. Yeah,
a plea for changes first of all from Paddy Tipping in Nottinghamshire. He says the distinction here between law and advice simply isn't clear. And I've just been speaking to Leicestershire's PCC, Willie Bark.
The police officer has to make a judgment as to whether it's reasonable for someone to have travelled so far from their home as they have. And that's putting a huge onus on the police, frankly, and not the kind of thing that, in my view, police officers would normally be invited to do.
Now, tonight, the Home Secretary has revealed that almost 45,000 of those fines have been issued across the country for COVID breaches. Priti Patel was also asked if those two walkers in Derbyshire were treated differently from the Prime Minister, who was spotted on that bike ride. And she said everyone needs to exercise their judgment, and the key advice, she said, stay local and stay away from other people.